What's up, Outliers? Quick market update. It's been a minute since I took a look at GME, so that's the goal for today. But as you could tell, we have a little guest appearance, which is my spine. Today, I had the pleasure of getting an epidural injection. You can see there's actually two of them here, and it's for all the disc stuff that I'm trying to resolve right now. This is supposed to help reduce inflammation, but I've never seen anything like this before, so I thought I would share it with you because, as I mention all the time, the goal of what I do is to share knowledge, some of it trading related, most of it, because that's where most of my knowledge is, but some of it is in learning stuff about this, which is actually kind of cool. These are like super big needles. I think they said they were like 3.5 inches, and they go into the epidural space. They put in a contrast. That's what makes the nerves here. You can actually see the nerves. It's what makes the nerves this darker color so that they can see them. And then, yeah, interesting, I thought, overall. And the other fun fact is these little bends, the doctor actually puts the bends in them herself, and it's so that she can drive the needle better, meaning, position it to where she wants. So fun stuff all around. All right, now let's talk about the markets. GameStop, what's been going on here? Well, we're running sideways. We had a little bit of a breath of fresh air once we saw that the at the market had completed. We've seen volume start to contract back down. So we hit a peak volume here on the 20th of September at 62 million shares. Then we came down to 14. Then we came down to 12. Then we came down to 6. And now we are down to 5.7. So this is kind of standard fare for what I've seen previously after we go through the offering where things start to cool off. Now, the cool part is we can see that overall GameStop has been consolidating really nicely here. So we're definitely leveled up a little bit from running down towards the 200-day moving averages. So I'm actually really eager to see if we continue trending sideways here, or if there is a point where it starts to turn back over. But even on a down day relative like today, meaning, I'll show you in a second what I mean. On today, we can see that it didn't actually dump off that hard. And it's very much just in a little bit of this consolidation phase. So I don't mind seeing this, and I hope that it can continue trending like this. Now, regardless of what I hope or what I want to see, it doesn't really matter because the market's going to do whatever the market wants to do. And right now we see massive, massive call skew. And this is, I'm not being hyperbolic, this is massive relative call skew. There's over 700,000 calls against less than 300,000 puts. That's even greater than the standard 2-to-1 that I look for in a general bullish configuration. And again, it's relative to the product. So when I say 2-to-1, I'm just talking about the ratio of calls to puts, and it's highly product specific. In general, I almost always see GameStop with call skew. However, from the put side, they've actually been coming down quite a lot. The other thing I want you to look at is look at the breakdown of these different expiration cycles. So we can see that most of the calls actually are in 18 October that have the higher OI. And for the puts, it's a bit of a mix. I see 18 October for sure, but then I also see longer term expiration cycles like 17 Jan 25. So those are people playing longer term hedging positions, and that's actually what makes up the bulk of what we see here from the put OI side of things. So overall, very interesting. Volatility still low. This is, again, kind of the new norm where I'm seeing everything below 100%. So a relative basis, right? 100% vol is not low in a gross number, but for something like GameStop, that is relatively low. Now, a couple other general admin notes that I'm picking up on. For me, I'm still essentially trading the same thing. I've had a couple of people ask about what I'm doing in here, and it's standard fare. I still have the base position, which is with long shares, and then I am still selling short calls against it because there's no reason for me not to, and it's a way for me to continue to extract some value from GameStop while we're going through these lulls. This is actually exactly where those short calls are useful. Now, the downside to the short calls is that if we get a big spike, they get ran over and it can offer a massive problem. That's why I always sell them at a ratio. So what I mean by that is I'm going to make sure I have at least more than 100 shares of GameStop if I'm going to sell one call, so that if my shares get called away for whatever reason, unlikely, but if they did in that big up move, I have the shares to offer because I do not want to be short GameStop. That's a terrible place to be. And that's not just because of the fun of talking about how screwed up the shorts are, but from a trader's perspective, that can put you in a really bad spot if there is a squeeze, unfortunately, at that same point in time. So by keeping it at a ratio, I make sure I do not cap my profit potential if there is a squeeze, because I do not want to cap the profit potential during those movements. I want to be able to trade them. That's what I do. So a couple other admin notes. Let's take a quick look at some dark pool trades because we are still seeing these 5,000 blocks come through. I think that's worth noting. I don't think we have a discrete understanding of what exactly this is just yet, but I think it is something I continue to see. And then if I look back at the 25th and I filter max of 5,000, I can see them again. And it's kind of a similar sizing. So again, I do not think anybody has a monopoly on the number 5,000. And I do not think all of these would be Roaring Kitty, even if this was him. This looks like standard people transacting. But the thing I cannot help but find really interesting about these is that if we go back to like the middle of April, something like that, we don't actually see 5,000 block transactions going on. They don't really seem to start until we get into May sometime, and then they start popping up. So just kind of an interesting thing. I don't think, again, anything to specifically highlight other than the occurrence of the thing, and then we'll continue keeping an eyeball on it to see if anything materializes. Last thing I want to take a look at with you, obviously, are the options side of things to see if we have any interesting trends. I haven't looked at this yet, so we'll look at it together really quick. And what do we have? I realize that I'm filtering by something. Give me one sec. So it keeps the size, which obviously I'm not looking for 5,000 blocks here. I'm just looking for any transactions. I want to sort it by premium, and super quiet today. Super quiet today. Biggest trade was 42K. There's not much to talk about there. I'll do for the week leading in just because I haven't looked at GameStop specifically yet, and still very quiet. So important to note, again, we keep an eye on this because as we see changes, that's when things start getting really interesting. Now, last item on the agenda is actually a question that I got via email. So let's see what Paul, our friend Paul, shout out to you, Paul. Great to hear from you. Paul says, I've been enjoying your videos lately, learning a lot about options. I was looking at GME feed today and wonder if you could comment on the trades in the photo below. I'm guessing they are connected based on time sizes and wondered if you could give your thoughts on their possible strategy. So first and foremost, I actually think that is, and this isn't meant to sound mean or anything like that, but I personally think it's a giant waste of time to play this game. I'm happy to go through the idea because I understand their perspective. I know where Paul is coming at this from, which is trying to connect dots. The problem is you cannot discreetly connect these dots literally ever. Anytime that we're coming up with connected dots, meaning this person probably did this and then this, it's still an inference. Even when we had that crazy options volume not all too long ago in GameStop, where we saw somebody buying pretty big options trades and then unwinding them like a half hour later in the same size, in the same strike, in the same expiration, it looks like the same person. And I would assume it is, but it's still an assumption. We don't know for certain. And it's important to identify that fact, because the process of going through and trying to identify what other people are doing is such a difficult way to attempt to make money trading. So that's why I think it's a really difficult process to go through. Now, that aside, happy to talk about this with Paul. I just want to give that note so that we don't have people that are trying to do this all the time as like their main approach to trading, because again, it's going to be really difficult to turn that into anything usable. So now, to Paul's point, if we take a look at this, I had to zoom it in a little bit so it's a little more legible. We can see that he's looking at two specific series here. We have the 17 Jan 25 18 calls, and then we have the 27 SEP 2024 expiration 17 calls. So the first thing I can see here is that if we add up these numbers, so for these 18 calls, if we add the 200, if we add the 160, if we add the 74, and if we add the 116, it comes out to 550. So that is very likely the same person. And it's very likely the same person that's getting filled over time into a position. And then we can look at the same thing with these 17 calls that are expiring nearer in time, that these ones are being purchased. And we can see a similar process where it does look like, based on the time, that this is the same person getting fills at similar time frames. So we can model this trade together and see what it looks like. So if we pop over here to the platform, we can go to the trade tab and we can grab first the 17 Jan 25s, go out here, and then we can grab the 18 calls, which are in the money. These are being sold because these are coming in at the bid. And I'm just going to ballpark it at like 580, something like that. It doesn't really matter what the price is. I just want to give it to you for context. And we have a bunch of trades in here because we've been looking at Roaring Kitties trades. So we'll have to tick some of these off. And then we'll start with these. So we have those. And again, we know that we have 50 of those. So we'll put short 550. Then if we go to the, what do we have here? The 17s on the 27th. And we have, again, it looks like 550 of those as well because the numbers match. So I think it's a completely fair assumption to say that we think this is the same person. And if we sell, these ones were bought at the offer. And again, just ballparking price. It's like five. What I'm doing right now, by the way, is just looking at the executed price just to come up with an idea. And it's like super close. It's a little bit cheaper. So maybe we'll call it like 540 or something like that. Just a little bit cheaper than the others. And again, we'll size this up so that it mirrors what we have. So we'll analyze this. We'll add this up so that it's 550 of those. And then we got those again for maybe like we'll call it like 540 or something like that. So that's the trade. And if you're wondering what that trade is, it essentially is just looking for movement. Now, this can happen in a few different ways, but this is more likely a play on volatility than anything else. That's what I see here. Because by coming into this really near-term position, I'm seeing the idea that we're playing probably close vol expanding is what I'm guessing. But again, the most important point to note here is we don't know what else is in this person's book, right? And that's what makes it such a sloppy game of trying to understand what they're doing, because I have no idea what else is in this person's portfolio. And even though these trades went on seemingly at the same time and seemingly make this, it doesn't necessarily tell us the whole picture of what else is held in the portfolio and how maybe these don't even line up with one another. Maybe they were just put on at the same time, but tied to other positions. Really hard to say. But if I were to look at these in a vacuum, to answer Paul's question, it looks like a volatility play. That's my best guess. So got to wrap up because I'm hopping over to the Outlier Pro live stream. I rescheduled the stream with Peruvian Bull just because I didn't know if I was going to be messed up after getting the procedure done a little earlier today. Overall, feel okay. So should be good to go. But yeah, I will follow back up with you all when we're going to do that. And then we have the GME live stream tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Be an outlier. See you all later.